s'est connu le temps de plaire aux exigences qu'on s'est créées, mais on s'y perd. Tu n'es qu'à quelques kilomètres et nos cœurs sont restés dans cette mer.
I've been dancing since I was about 3 years old, but I didn't really start like more advanced pre-professional training until about 2 years ago. I love ballet because it's a form of expression that you can portray to an audience, and then you can move that audience so that they feel what you're feeling, and that's what I love about dance in general. Dance has been a big part of our family. My mom was dancing at Long Beach Ballet for a long time, and my older sister Carly, she was at Long Beach Ballet before me, and she really inspired me, and that's what got me into dance at the beginning. I really love dance, like since I was really little. When I was like about probably a year old, I would always walk around on my tiptoes, and that kind of got me quickly into dance lessons, and then I'd always wear a tutu from then on. Well, not recently, but when I was little. When I went to P&B over the summer, I had a great time. It was really fun because I got to learn the ballerina technique, which I don't normally do. And it was also great to have a lot new teachers and do different forms of Pilates and gyrotonics. The day of my injury, I got up for morning class and I went on the bus to the studio with the rest of my level. And the beginning of class was fine. It was normal, like always. And I didn't really feel that different. I just knew that something was a little bit wrong. And then we came into the center and I was doing an adagio. And it was my left leg, standing leg, and I kind of just fell on it and I didn't really know what was going on. And then everybody started freaking out around me and I was really confused. And then I looked at my knee and I was like, whoa, yeah. And then I had to go to the hospital and they did x-rays and then they popped it back into place. The moment I got injured, what was really going through my mind was, this could not be happening. I was really shocked. I didn't know what was going on or how I even injured myself because I couldn't really think of a route to it. I didn't really know what I did to make this injury happen. I couldn't dance for the few last weeks of Pacific Northwest Ballet Summer Intensive because of my injury, so I had to sit out and watch the class that I would normally be in. That actually wasn't that bad because I wrote down all the corrections, and now that I can dance again, I'm starting to apply them, and I know that that experience actually helped me a lot.
You're feeling 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. I became interested in Pilates and dance conditioning when I was a dance student in San Francisco in the late 1980s, and I sustained an injury, and I had never heard of Pilates before, and I ended up studying at the St. Francis Memorial Hospital, and they had a special sports and dance medicine center there, and they were one of the first ones in the whole emerging field of dance medicine. So I got to study with some of the best teachers. And the very first Pilates lesson I ever took, I fell in love with it, and it's such an incredible way to have complete control over your alignment and then later on your technique. And so that's when I found it. I was a dancer myself. I was training at the time.
My experience working with Miss Alicia and Dr. Butler have been so different. I really like it a lot better because I think that the teacher has a lot more time to give more specific advice and actually tell me what I'm doing wrong and what I can do to prevent doing it wrong and make it better. And in a regular class situation, I think that the teacher would feel like they're taking up too much time or they're not giving the other students enough attention. So this way, it really gives me a lot better understanding of what I'm doing.
Conditioning is important for a dancer because when you're in dance class, there isn't really enough time to get all of the muscles and the coordination going to create the effect that you need, especially now in 2012 with so much interesting contemporary choreography going on that even classical dancers need to master. There's so many complex physical movements and they're getting more and more athletic. So conditioning, extra conditioning outside of class, using methods that don't get in the way of dance technique but actually assist it, are getting more and more important. There just simply isn't enough time in class. That's the short answer. We're working on getting this to not work so hard and be so tight, and to getting this part of the leg to be more active. And that's the muscle on the inside of the quad that keeps that knee from sliding sideways out of its track. I think the proper way for an injured dancer to get back into dancing is to have their case evaluated very, very carefully by qualified professionals. And these will usually include a team, so not just their Pilates teacher or gyrotonic teacher or dance teacher, but also whatever kind of physical therapist they're seeing. And ideally, these people work together as a team to look at the case individually, to determine what kind of timeline to use to get the dancer back into class. But some kind of combination of gyrotonic training and Pilates training, depending on the type of injury and the way the dancer responds, can be used, and slowly building back to class from there. So conditioning sessions, and then slowly you start a little bit of bar work and then a little bit of center work, and then finally the dancer is ready to do a whole class again. It really depends on the injury. If it's something very mild, like let's say a mild case of Achilles tendonitis, or it's some clicking in the hip that's not that painful, it can take a week or two. But if it's a stronger injury, a more serious injury, especially something, if it's involved surgery, if surgery's been involved, then you're looking at least 12 weeks. And then if it's kind of a moderate injury, like a little bit of a more ankle sprain or a knee dislocation, then that's going to take about 6 to 8 weeks.
I was working with Dr. Butler for about 1 or 2 months before I started working with Miss Alicia. Yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff with performers.
Okay.
And then after that we do like an hour, half hour of ballet technique.
Perfect.
And that's like just fine-tuning.
Yeah,
stuff.
and that's really good to do after you do the Pilates because you've kind of corrected out some issues and then you go in and reinforce it.
Mhm.
I had a very serious skiing accident when I was 16. And I fell and my binding didn't release and I shattered my entire ankle inside the boot. So I ended up in a cast and having surgery. So I was in a cast for a year and I was on bed rest for 3 or 4 months. I couldn't put any weight. I couldn't even be upright. And then they had to go in 6 months after the fracture because it didn't heal properly, and they had to re-break one of the bones and then do a bone graft and screw in a piece of bone so the leg could heal.
Wow.
And afterwards, I didn't get any rehab or therapy. The orthopedic surgeon, who was a wonderful, wonderful surgeon and did a great job with the surgery, told me that since I was a girl, it was better to let it heal naturally. And if I'd been a boy on the football team, then they would have sent me to therapy. So right then and there, I decided I was going to learn how to do therapy. So this looks a bit better. There's still a little swelling in there.
Yeah, I've noticed it's kind of a little bit.
Okay, and how is it feeling?
Feels fine.
Okay. Do you feel like you're guarding at all? Like, is there anything you're afraid to do?
Last week, yes, but this week, no.
Okay, so what were you cautious about last week?
We started doing center and we were moving around a lot more, like doing turns and stuff. And the floor was kind of slippery and I felt kind of unstable.
The first thing I'm gonna do is some work to loosen up the Achilles and loosen up the tendon on the outside of the knee. And then we'll work on some strengthening work on the inside. And then I'll also work on mobilizing your hip. All right, go ahead and lie on your back. Let me just see what your hip is doing. Rehab is very important for anyone because what happens is that when you have an injury, certain tissues get weak, so other tissues compensate. And so you have what we call a compensatory pattern where some muscles take the place of other muscles. If we don't re-educate, you keep up that pattern and then a lot of times you'll end up either re-injuring the same area or another area. For example, with her, we have to be concerned because she's putting all her weight on the other leg in order not to load here. Well, obviously as a dancer who's jumping off both feet, we need her to put her weight equally on both sides and not favor. The theory behind this is that there can be microscopic adhesions or sort of the fascia gets glued down and that's why it'll feel a little bit grainy when we get to a problem area. So doing this essentially scraping kind of motion mobilizes that soft tissue, the connective tissue basically.
The stages of recovery from an injury, it depends on the injury. If the student has had surgery, then they will be in a cast or a walking boot. And so as soon as they get out of the cast or a walking boot, they'll be working with a physical therapist on very, very gentle mobilization exercises and treatments such as ice and ultrasound, electric stim, things like that. And so they'll have that kind of stage of recovery where they're supervised in a physical therapy office. Then they'll get cleared for exercise and they'll often start exercising in the physical therapy office. And at that point, they can then start working with their Pilates trainer or their gyrotonic trainer on dance conditioning. So then they'll go through that phase where it's getting just more of the physical strength to do their skill. And then they'll have what we might want to call the dancing phase, actually dancing again. So we're going to do dig, 4 times to the front. 2. Good. Now try to put weight on your foot. The process for Micayla involves continuing to understand how her hip mobility and turnout is related to her knee alignment and her tracking. So Micayla is studying very specifically right now, and she's doing some very incredible work on learning about what goes on in the hip, how we turn out, because ballet is based on turnout. And so what needs to happen in the hip, especially in terms of flexibility, to allow her to get the most out of her hip joint that she is able to in terms of her structure.
So we're always looking for how can we make her body work the most efficiently and not recruit things that she shouldn't be recruiting and that she's using the muscles in the way she should be using them.
Part of the issues that are involved in getting back to 100% dance conditioning are endurance issues. The idea is to not only reprogram all of this, but then add endurance. How long can she keep a correct pattern, right? Think 32 days or, like a long Allegro sequence. How long can the landing stay correct before you start to see the old pattern come back? And I'm watching again for knee tracking and making sure that it's going over the toe. Land more quietly and with more control. More quietly and with more control. Just think about Dr. Butler smiling as she senses that leg is stronger, yeah? A lot of knee injuries happen because we turn out from the feet instead of the hips. So I am helping her change that pattern with this exercise. My goals for a student are to really educate the student so that eventually the student can be their own teacher. My goal for each student that I work with is to help them understand how their bodies work and help them develop awareness so that they can self-correct, because that's what a dancer does every day. You know, a dancer has to go in to take their company class and do their rehearsal and work with a choreographer and a ballet mistress and be under the supervision of an artistic director. They have to know how to keep their technique up to snuff and how to stay uninjured, and then also how to develop their artistry. There's a lot to do as a professional dancer. So the more self-aware they can be and the more knowledge they have about their own anatomy can be so helpful in being a really, you know, exciting dancer, but also a great employee for the company.
The mind, no question. Body's easy. If you understand how the muscles and the joints and the tissues work, it's just a matter of progressing it. Okay, so what I'm seeing is you're landing more on this side. You're still favoring that side. All right, back up. Land equally on both. Yeah, you're landing on this, you're not landing on that. All right, now, what I'm going to have you do, you're going to do both sides. You're going to stand there, then you're going to take your weight off and put the weight on one leg and then jump to 2 feet. From 1 foot, jump to 2 feet. Okay, do that a couple of times. To get them better than they were when they came in to see me and better than they were before they had an injury. That's always my goal with any patient when they come in is I don't want them just at the level they were when they had the injury. Yeah. I want them even better so that they don't re-injure themselves at all in any area.
I have had many injuries. I ruptured my Achilles tendon. That was the most exciting one for sure. But I've also had broken toes, and I've also had a broken foot and a sprained foot. So I've done quite a few injuries. I relate to Micayla's injury by simply watching her knee and asking her a lot of questions. Almost every exercise you hear me saying, what do you feel? What do you notice here? How's this feeling? How's your knee feel? So all the time I'm checking in so that I make sure that I'm aware of what's going on in her knee. I've never had any injury. So with Micayla, I'm being really careful to always ask for feedback so that I know exactly what she's sensing. How's it feel, Beast?
It feels pretty good.
Does it feel better? A little bit more solid in there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Front. And rush to the front. Passe. Tail heavy. Foot weight on foot. Passe. And right side comes around. Left knee initiates the promenade. Try to rise straight up. A little bit more upper spine pull up. Straight up down. She wouldn't have made this kind of progress this fast if it weren't for the kind of student she is and the kind of person that she is.
That's so much better. You couldn't do that before. Have I seen an improvement with Micayla? Yes, I have. She's definitely on the right path.
My main goal is to become a professional dancer with the Royal Ballet. It's been about 5 months since I had my injury, and I've been working really hard on retraining. I feel like I'm so much stronger and my balance is a lot more grounded, and I feel like I know what I'm doing now a lot more than before. The only thing that I'm still cautious about doing is jumping. But other than that, I think I'm doing pretty well.